You sure you want to start streaming? Yes. All right. Says we're live, so.
Cool.
See what happens. All right. What's going on, everybody? Time for what? Episode 4 of the amazing Acuitas Roundtable.
Wow, 4 episodes.
Big group.
Yeah, most of us. Almost.
Yeah. Not too bad. All right. What do we got on deck today? What are we starting with? What's fun?
Well, we've got quite a bit on DEX. We got Binance moves away from Ethereum to launch DEX. We've got SBI, big finance company in Japan bringing one Ethereum. We've got a nice article talking about how banks are the big money launderer, not Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of articles touching on cryptocurrency in Venezuela and Argentina. We've got a nice, and we've got the SEC saying, ETFs are inevitable. So we have quite a bit to start with.
That was nice and juicy and vague. But let's start with what's on top of that list and go from there. Jay, what do you got?
Well, I think we're going to start with Binance moves away from Ethereum as it prepares to launch DEX, and I believe Jason, you wanted to speak in depth on that.
No, I was more of gonna throw in some Tron stuff that I've been looking at.
Yeah. Well, no, look, I'm not throwing you under a bus.
Right.
Hey, the story behind that. Let me bring it up to the.
Well, Jared and I did some talking today too about the DEX stuff, and it does sound pretty interesting.
Well, we've always been interested in that. Obviously, volume is always an issue, but you figure if Binance is behind it, that could give it some weight. We're still waiting on some more of the details. I think the last article that came out had, a few more details about the transactions per second, the listing fee. They say they're going to take a small amount per trade or whatever. Ooh. What was very interesting in that was they did not say anything about an approval process. Now, I don't know if there is or isn't, but they basically said, look, it's $100,000, whether that's in your token. So I don't know how that really shakes out, but they didn't say anything about like they're going to, approve or deny what gets put onto the DEX. So, kind of interesting.
Well, isn't the elephant in the room? What's the impact it's going to have on them moving away from the Ethereum token? And is this going to be the first of many to move away from the Ethereum token?
Well, my first question was, I'm very excited about it, so I'd like to own whatever token's going to run it, but.
BNB probably, right?
That's what they said originally, but again, this paper doesn't really mention BNB. Pull that back up, Jay. Like
I would imagine that that would make sense, right?
So Jay, scroll down a little bit on that. So what are we saying? So it says it's going on testnet. Fine. It was built using Tendermint protocol and DPoS and BTF.
Cosmos.
Yeah, okay. Eric and I looked at Tendermint a couple years ago for a project.
This year, 2017, will be migrated from an ERC token and act as the gas for the.
There it is. Gas is the buy. So it's going to migrate. So are they saying that if whatever BNB I currently own gets converted over? So that's the whole moving off of Ethereum. Okay. So that's
interesting that they will get a small fee from each trade on the DEX. See, so this is kind of what we touched on earlier. It's like, what's the point of a DEX? When people are.
When you have to pay a fee.
Yeah, or you have to have entry gatekeepers or whatever, I guess. I mean, that's the stuff like hearing this where I'm just don't totally have my head around it yet. It's like, how could you do that stuff?
Well, they can say it's a DEX because it's decentralized, but just because it's decentralized doesn't mean they don't have a gateway to get onto a decentralized exchange, right? And they have a method to keep making money off of a decentralized exchange. They're basically saying maybe they could go, hey, because it's like this, it's more fault tolerant, right? Because it's not.
Right.
The transactions are being managed by all these nodes and not some server in Malta or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess it'd be that, and then also, what's the security and everything for it, right? I mean, if exchanges are getting hacked, fairly regularly now, is this helping them spread that risk? Have they figured that out?
That's a good question.
But I guess it's just when we've talked about DEXs over the years, it's it seems like it just goes hand in hand, that it isn't controlled by any one entity. And I forget, we were talking about this earlier today, if it was BitShares or somebody else's DEX, but it was like, how do you even get on a DEX? And this one we were looking at was like, well, you fill in this, I think it was like a JSON file or something, and then you submit it here, and then it gets propagated out or something like that. And in my mind, I can wrap my head around that, because that seems to make sense. As it's propagated out through the network, and you abide by those initial rules. It's not like you have to be run through a committee or something. You can have machine validators or something validate, yeah, this is filled in, this is filled in, this is there. Okay, cool. So anyway, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
What I think, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric.
I just said it's interesting. Another project signing on to use DPoS, delegated proof of stake. So now we have Steam, which was one of the original DPoS projects created by Dan Larimer, then EOS, then Tron, kind of did whatever they did to make it TPS, Tron's version of DPoS, and now Binance doing their DEX using DPoS.
Yeah.
So it looks like maybe we're going to start seeing a lot more projects using DPoS in the future.
Well, and Eric, Jason and I talked about this earlier, because we know your feelings on DPoS, right? And
Yeah.
but here's the other side of it, is I'm thinking to myself, there's different problems that are associated with either going fully decentralized or fully centralized. So if I'm going to be fully centralized, then I don't need blockchain at all, right? I'm just I just build a highly scalable centralized SQL server that does way better, right? But if I'm going to be totally decentralized, that's great. But we saw that it's BitShares, and it doesn't do anything because it's so decentralized. There's no organization. So the solution was like, okay, how do we find some middle ground that allows us to do upgrades and allows for better paths of migration? Okay, so the governance model to me makes sense, but the problem this governance model has is the exact same problem the United States democracy has, and that is an uninformed populace, right? So like, voting is great if all your voters are fully informed and you're holding your congressman's feet to the fire, right? And you fire them when they don't do their job. But when you get to a point where the last article I read about this said, well, with EOS, only 19% of the people even voted ever. Okay, well, that's a fault of the voting populace, not necessarily of the architecture of it itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay. So.
Well, let me ask you. But we are celebrating this change. This is a move forward for obviously Binance thing for them, but just for crypto and technology in general, right? This is something we should applaud.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm applaud it in the way. So, two things.
They're experimenting.
We're going to segue into more of this discussion because, like it was said earlier, this is tied to Tron as well, and things like that. And Eric and I were discussing this last week, and there's bigger things here that this ties into, and I might be able to clear a little bit of that up or shed some light on it. But I think anything for Binance, I feel pretty good about it. I mean, they're the volume leader, and who knows what would have happened in crypto if Binance wasn't there. We saw last year, Polo took a huge, massive hit. Bittrex got a lot of volume after that.
Yeah.
And who were the other big exchanges, right? Kraken and
but those never worked right. The APIs were broken at the time.
Right. So there's all these issues, and then Binance sort of swooped in at the right time, and they got this massive volume, and so there's something to be said, I think, about them being there, and the fact that they're able to make in the market, almost $500 million, it says something to them as a team and a company, right? They're basically like a juggernaut in this space. So so I think in that regard, I think it is important because obviously, they're at the front of the pack, up in the front, everybody loves their exchange or whatever. So I'm not going to say they're the best or whatever, but by volume, they're the biggest, right? So it's like when they go and they do a move like this, and look at how they have rolled out their platform, what they're doing with BNB, and now, here's another thing, right? It's like they're laying down the groundwork, I think, for a lot more stuff to come in the future, and this is we're just starting to see like some of this, building this DEX, and if it is BNB that they're using as the, native token on it, I mean, it's massive for them, and they're not going to stop at, $500 million in revenue. I mean, it's gonna, once this, and again, once this next big wave hits, what if we're like, this year, a year off or whatever, I mean, uh, who knows what's going to happen. You're going to see some big stuff from them, I think.
But do you want to use this opportunity to segue to a Tron piece and get into that, or do you want to take a break from this and go into
No, let's do it.
What Tron article did you have in mind? I'm looking at.
Well,
I didn't really have a Tron article. I mean, maybe Jared knows something. This is not so much geared towards a specific article. It's things that, in my, I guess you would call it Google would call it your 20% time or whatever. In the spare time, I'm working on, just other Tron things, right? Again, from previous discussions we've had, this is something that's been on my radar that I've been noticing for the past, 3 or 4 months. A lot of Tron news, a lot of development news, and, to sort of frame this out, I mean, I've been in tech a long time, and when there's news of, company releasing this or that, you start to see these patterns and you start to be interested in that stuff. So that's why I'm becoming interested in Tron and digging into it more, looking at how their network works and everything. I'm pretty bullish on it, actually, and I'm bullish on it not from the crypto perspective. I'm bullish on it from the developer perspective. So, Eric and I sat down last week and we were talking about, like, I'm showing him some of the stuff that I'm doing and we were talking about it, and he's like, why though? DPoS, sucks, right?
no,
right?
No, he didn't say that.
No, but it's just like,
I've experienced it, man. I've been on the end of a DPoS.
The DPoS stick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and Vitalik has said as much about this too recently, right?
Yeah. Right.
So so you got to look at it from what is the perspective you're looking at this from. So from the Vitalik perspective, of course, he is looking at it, and he said so much as security for the distributed algorithm and everything, right? So yeah, you don't have that with DPoS, of course, but that's what makes DPoS fast, or that's what can make it fast, and that's why not anytime soon are you going to see a blockchain like Bitcoin or any kind of POW blockchain be fast. That's why they have Lightning networks and things like that, right? Because it's just not fast. So you figure out ways to augment it to where you can do those things. And Lop and all these guys have said basically the same thing. You can't, that was the whole big criticism against Bcash and Ver and everybody, which is like, just increasing the block size isn't going to make it like
right.
scalable to where they want to use it, right? So yeah, looking from that perspective, POW correctness, security, and all those types of things, right? It's like, sure, you can say that DPoS is a pile of trash or whatever. But that isn't how I look at it. I mean, I look at it for, if you're going to ask me what coins am I going to invest in, I'm going to, of course, pick Bitcoin. I like Litecoin still. Tron because of other factors, but, really Bitcoin is the big guy still, and that's really where I feel like a lot of people that are true that really care about all the decentralized and everything, they're going to go, right? And that's fine. There's no arguing that. But I'm not looking at Tron from that perspective. I'm not looking at Ethereum even from that perspective, right? I'm looking at that from a developer perspective. And the thing is, developers need platforms to write things on it, right? And so we saw CryptoKitties last year basically bring down
Yeah.
Ethereum, but that also, you look at Ethereum and it's like, Ethereum is not Bitcoin, it's never wanted to be Bitcoin. It's a platform to build things on, smart contracts on. So, those are programs. So when you look at, Tron in that regard, I think people are used to development foundations, platforms that are controlled by big companies, Google, Amazon, Apple. So this is nothing new. And in fact, it's everywhere now. Nobody's going to develop any kind of, mobile application or anything nowadays, on some friggin' weird platform nobody's ever heard of, right? It's like the big guys have that whole industry locked in. Fine, it doesn't matter. People still make money on it. People still build all kinds of cool things. And, as far as I'm concerned, case closed on that. So Ethereum's, really the development network to beat. Tron is trying to do that. And that's exactly why I'm bullish on Tron, is because I think they get it. They either really understand that or they're just really lucky at this point. But if they understand that, it's all about being a development platform, and then DPoS does not matter. In fact, people are not going to care about that one bit. They're going to care about speed because it's a feature. Google has popularized that. It's everywhere. Users expect it. Developers are smashed over the head by it constantly. If it's not fast, it's a piece of garbage.
And you got to figure too, like you figure DPoS has problems, but so does totally decentralized, right? You still get the 51% attack, right? We've seen that. So it's not like there's like one that's, oh, this is amazing, we're going to go with that. It's you have to kind of pick your poison. And so if your purpose of your chain is to get dApps on it, then why wouldn't you go with one that has a higher TPS? If I'm running applications on the blockchain, I need high TPS, like unless you
I think it still really hasn't, it has settled in, I think, for some people, but again, it's like I've written for numerous platforms and I see it now very clearly, and the explosion hasn't hit. Tron's happy that they have like 200 dApps or something on, it's like that's minuscule compared to Google Play or the App Store or whatever, right?
Sure.
So I don't think people have totally clued into this yet. Some people have. They're of course the early adopters of the platform. Lots of gaming and betting apps and stuff like that on Tron. EOS as well. So they probably don't need super crazy transactions. 700,000 TPS, 2,000 TPS is probably fine if you understand how to work within those constraints. But the thing is Tron they're building a platform, and when everybody else finally clues into dApps, but not just dApps, of course, hybrids as well, how to use regular infrastructure with blockchain and stuff like that. I think that's a big deal. I think Microsoft and a lot of those other companies that have joined that enterprise alliance for Ethereum, mostly get it. I think they probably get it actually pretty good because they build all those tools. So again, they've seen these cycles too. They've created these cycles. So
isn't it possible? Is it possible that the right technology is just going to the right industries? Ethereum is better suited to the needs of the corporate industries, whether those needs are security over transaction speed, and Tron and EOS are gravitating to gaming and consumer applications because they don't have the same needs that the corporation. So it's maybe the markets they're going after where to just continuing to better define the technology.
Well, I think for Ethereum's case, it's because they were first, right? they're basically the first well-known public, blockchain contract platform. So a lot of these Microsoft and all these big companies, of course, they want to code to things, so they have that. Um, Tron is actively trying to pull people off Ethereum. I mean, they have their native token that you can build your tokens on, the TR10 standard. Then they have the TR20, which is basically the ERC20 bridge, I guess you would call it, that you can run Solidity and you can bring your ERC20 based contracts over. That so it's pretty clear in that regard that they're doing that. They didn't have um, the head start that Ethereum did with that. So we're probably going to see. I suspect we're going to see those same companies trying to get into Tron as well, because if it can do enough of what Ethereum does, again, I don't think these guys care about proof of work or any of those algorithms. Honestly, I think they like the decentralized public access of being able to basically create web services on a worldwide computer system without having to sign up for an Amazon account or something like that, right? I think they like that concept. They know that's the future, and so it's probably only a matter of time before they start jumping on board as well. So
Are really having a lot more friction between the two of them as they go after the same business.
yeah, and my question now is sort of like, what's Ethereum going to be able to do about it? I know Ethereum 2 is being talked, about. I don't honestly.
What about is it Cardano a development platform too?
Yes.
Right. So I mean, it's not like it's just these two,
They're
right?
yeah, they're still in the process of completing the project,
Okay.
but they have rolled out portions of it, and
Yep.
yeah, Cardano's it's an interesting project. They're really doing a lot of work before they do the full-blown launch. I mean, they're putting in a lot of hours, science research into it before actually
And hopefully that pays
opening.
off, because you figure this is a space where it seems like first to market, a lot of times can take a foothold, right? Just because you're the
Yeah,
best.
but if you look at like what Jay was saying, I mean, Ethereum was first to market. Yeah, they're obviously are big, but now you have EOS and Tron
nipping at the
jumping
heels.
on,
Yeah.
and
Slurping up there. Yeah.
Tron, right, is siphoning off a lot of Ethereum.
Right. It's just
Yeah.
Nice choice of words.
No.
Yeah.
No.
All right. Yeah.
So yeah, even now, I think if you don't come first to market, with the right solution, somebody can come along and take a big chunk of your market share.
Yep.
Yeah. Then I just brought up the coin market cap.
Yeah, I want to jump in. I haven't, and I guess one of my issues is I haven't been able to separate out use cases for a lot of these blockchains. We know Bitcoin is money. I mean, that's its use case. That's what it's always been about. Where, Tron, Ethereum, they're after different use case, for the blockchains. And so I think we have to look at them different, like Tron being, I guess, for more entertainment type use cases, whereas Bitcoin is straight money, and it's censorship resistant. Nobody can tell you you can't move this coin
Right.
to another wallet, whereas as DPoS that they can censor transactions. So
But again, that gets to the electoral model, right? Like if they're censoring transactions and you don't agree with it, then you get rid of those block producers, right? That's ideally how it's supposed to work.
yeah,
Which is what EOS did, right? Did EOS do the same thing basically, or?
ideally.
I mean, ideally, and well, the same thing with the United States Constitution. I should be able to overthrow my government, but practically that's tough to do, right? So I get it, but I mean, I don't think it's a fault of the architecture. It's a fault of the people that fault of humanity. Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to put it. You know,
Well, and that's what Bitcoin did is they took out humanity's ability to censor one another, and now we have censorship resistant money. So let's put Bitcoin in its box.
Yeah, there you go.
As like it's the vault. That's where I'm going to store
right.
my value.
What is the
I'm not going to
what is the purpose of Bitcoin, and what is the purpose of Tron or Ethereum? Right? It's like, is it a store of money or is it an application platform? you know?
I think once you start breaking them apart like that and looking at the platforms differently, and this is what Jay kind of enlightened me to, then I start to look at things differently. But Bitcoin's still my money.
Yeah, right. And for most people, it is.
It is your store of value, and these other networks are your computation platform.
Yeah, entertainment, etc. Right.
Well, but that's even a level higher than just computation. I look at them as like, Ethereum didn't know it was going to build entertainment on top of its blockchain, but Vitalik knew that he wanted to have programmability outside of the Bitcoin script, right? I forget their scripting thing's called, but outside of that, right? So then once you have that, of course, then that opens the the door for that's the whole thing about these platforms. When these companies build these, it's like they have an idea of what they want to build, but they have no idea what people are going to build. So we've seen it over and over. Everybody's like, whoa, how did you who came up with that app, or who did this, right? It's like you can't ever predict any of that stuff. So
yeah, but believe me, once you're on the end of the DPoS stick, to where where they smack you, that's all it takes, and you're forever skeptical of it.
I can hear your pain, Eric. I can hear the pain.
Well, yeah, but
it was a shitty experience, and I went to a bunch of the gosh, I can't even remember what we call them, the witnesses in Steam, and they basically just they're not gonna attack one another, to help a small guy. So yeah,
right.
It wasn't a good experience, and I'm pretty much skeptical of DPoS. I mean, I still will use it, but I'm not gonna like go full bore into it, and I'll explain to people why, what my experience was, and a lot of other people have had.
Well, and this is going to
experiences.
Yeah, this is going to get to the bigger issue, I think, of a lot of things that we're seeing now in tech. Which is like, there's a lot of people that are being censored on Twitter and a lot of these networks and everything, and they're all controlled by these small groups of people, right? So yeah, in that regard, DPoS is going to do the exact same thing in my mind. It's going to be no different than if Google has a platform, or Apple, or whatever. The fact that it's global per se, and it's not just invented in this one area of the US or something, I don't know what that's going to play at into it. But yeah, those witness nodes and all those people with stakes are not going to. There's value in that to them, and they're not going to, let it go. Yeah, exactly. So, so we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see more of the same of what we have now. We're just gonna see it using a different infrastructure and architecture. And while there is a lot of, I think there's a lot of, I wouldn't call it negativity, but there are a lot of concerns that we're saying with this. I think in the end, I'm still, like I said, I'm still going to be bullish on it, because it's going to be the next wave, and it is going to challenge, I think, at some point, the big guys. Apple, Google, Amazon, all those guys, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One or multiple of these are going to challenge. I mean, it's coming.
Well, that might even
have projects.
Well,
right. You have you have projects in there already that are directly challenging, like EC2 and all that, right? Golem, and there's all these other projects. But I mean, I think this is more of a fundamental layer of, once you have worldwide platform layer, again, who knows how many of those servers are actually running on like Amazon stuff, for instance. But you get enough money. I mean, those guys don't even have to worry. They build their own data center with, all kinds of stuff around the world, and they don't even have to run on Amazon. So, but I guess the point is just it is the new paradigm. What I'm seeing being built on it, I'm actually seeing more things. I feel like, I know Ethereum had stuff. It just seems like with a lot of these things, they become more fine-tuned, fine-grained. They're easier to discover. There's like DApp radar and stuff that already are tracking, EOS, Tron, Ethereum apps and everything like that. So, it's a big step from over what we had like a year and a half or 2 years ago. Where do you find a DApp? I don't know. What is a DApp? It's like, so, we're entering through all these phases already of, discovery, maturing of the platforms and things like that. And they're happening a lot quicker, obviously, than, these other little things that have happened before, like when we switched over to mobile, from web and stuff like that. So, yeah, I just see these things repeating, time scales compacting. Tron is a development platform. Bitcoin is not, and that's how I'm looking at all this stuff. And that's why I'm playing with Tron, because I want to know, like, how good or how crappy it is. And so far, I see a lot of people putting apps out there, games, making a lot of money. So the patterns are repeating in my mind.
Awesome. Ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's talk about Argentina. Here's a Bitcoin news article out there. Bitcoin now accepted for public transportation. So I look at this, and again, the more they put cryptocurrency into the mainstream, the faster the faster adoption. And I think that's the pretty much the nature of this article. What does come to mind is that knowing the speed of how Bitcoin transfers from place to place. I guess if somebody wants to utilize Bitcoin in a transportation system, is there just some level of trust that's in place because they're not really waiting for the transaction speed to actually take place, or is there some 30-second delay?
No, that's a good. No, I mean, you figure, Bitcoin's every 10 minutes, right? So that's a good question. If it's not Lightning, I'm not sure how they're handling that.
I think immediately, I haven't read the article, but what I would think is that you would load up your card. We have the cards in Japan for the train, and
like a BitPay card. Yeah, that.
Yeah,
kind of
that's
I
my
got you.
Japan card. So you load it up with Bitcoin, and then you can just use it.
So they're saying you can fund your card with Bitcoin. It's not a live Bitcoin transaction.
Yeah, and I haven't read the article, but
that's
I would assume
you're probably right. Yeah.
Okay.
Then you're taking your mobile wallet and just
the news. The news is akin to anybody else saying, "Hey, we now accept Bitcoin for payment," as opposed to
and you can see right here they're talking about using travel cards, right? Topping up travel cards.
Yeah. So they've added a Bitcoin transaction to their system. That's pretty much
like you were saying, Jared. Once Lightning picks up, then you'll be able to just take your Lightning wallet and boom, QR code it and go through the gate.
And I don't know, we never did touch on it because I think last week we didn't do our episode, but we had the Lightning torch, in the news, I think, and that's kind of cool, right? I mean,
that was cool.
That was a big deal.
Yeah, it's still going, isn't it? I mean,
it's still going. They're trying to get Elon Musk to jump on it, and there's a good possibility because I think Starkness said her DMs are open to Elon. So
yeah, nice.
Well, I thought that was that was pretty good that Jack, Dorsey handed it off to Elizabeth Stark. I was like, wow, that's pretty sweet. That is a fun thing, I think.
So I missed that. So I don't understand what's the connection there. So So why is that a big deal?
Well, Elizabeth Stark, is one of
I
the
know.
Lightning Labs.
Yeah, I knew her, but I don't know who's Jack Dorsey.
CEO of
Twitter.
Twitter.
Oh, that's
Square.
the. Well, okay.
And
So,
Square. Yeah.
well, I am live to the internet telling you I did not know who Jack Dorsey was. All right, that makes sense.
Dude, you're
Okay.
probably a better man for it.
I'm
He's
like,
not a bad guy.
I'm
but,
like,
you
is he an
know.
actor? Like, I didn't. Of course, I just
Who is this person?
didn't even look him up. I was like, yeah, whatever.
Oh, okay. You don't have the Cash App yet, then, do you? I'm gonna send you the Cash App link so I get a referral.
Yeah, at least if you follow Joe Rogan, you can know who Jack Dorsey is.
I don't follow anybody on Twitter. I don't have Twitter, man.
Yeah.
Twitter.
I don't do it.
Twitter's actually one of the best tools out there because once you get your feed down to the correct people to follow for news.
Okay,
and
that's fine.
Information. It's like boom, boom.
Okay,
you're getting.
I'll be honest. Hey, in all honesty, the Twitter account I have is the Acuitas Twitter account, and we follow all the crypto people. And I go through that feed, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it's just this massive pile of stuff. And I get zero out of it. I go through and I try to find nuggets of wisdom, but to wade through all the stuff to get there is tough. But I get it. If I had my own Twitter account and I like hand picked like people I liked, I could see how it would be kind of cool. But I'm just not into it, man.
Again, it comes down to who you follow.
Right.
Yeah, I get it.
I tried watching the Joe Rogan and Jack Dorsey video. I got like, I don't know, maybe a quarter of the way through it. It's interesting so far. Twitter, man, what can you say about them? I mean, yeah, it's like anybody in crypto is obviously on Twitter, of course, right? You do find some great stuff in there, but as I think Jack was saying in Joe's, Rogan's thing, maybe in not so many words, it's there's just a lot of stuff that isn't.
No,
good.
he said. I mean, I watched the whole thing. He said that Bitcoin, he considers Bitcoin to be the currency of the internet.
Yeah.
That's pretty much a quote. And I tell you after that interview, Joe Rogan got blasted for not being harder on Jack Dorsey. And Jack Dorsey, and so Joe Rogan said, I'll if given the opportunity, I'll ask the hard questions next time. And Jack Dorsey's already agreed to come back.
Nice. Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah, so we'll see. But even better than that, Stephen Livera, who has a podcast, somehow got Jack and Starkness to come on his podcast this Saturday, I believe, at 1 p.m. They're setting it up. So both Jack and Elizabeth Stark are going to be on Stephen Livera's podcast, which is one of the best crypto podcasts, this Saturday, and that is going to be a really good show. We're gonna learn a lot about what, if any, Jack's intentions are with being able to issue Lightning payments through Twitter.
Through Twitter. Wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Now we're getting to that. That's interesting. All right.
If you can, Eric, you find at least a link or a promo to that so we can throw it into the lounges. So
sure. Yeah, I've got
everybody in the Acuitas group can see that because that'd be pretty cool. All right, well, Jason dropped out, but I'm gonna keep rolling. So also,
someone was knocking on his door. I think he was done. He was like, "Are you kidding me?" Anyway.
Well, anyway,
No, Daddy. Yeah.
Well, keeping in the same trend, like I said, we just talked about Argentina and their use. This article just came out yesterday, and again, I think we all know the state that Venezuela's been in for the last year or so with inflation over 1,000%, and as people continue to study what's going in and go out in Venezuela, this came out and said the transition of Bitcoin between Colombia and what's the other?
Isn't Venezuela the one that did the Petro or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Venezuela did the Petro. You got Maduro, who's the current president, and then another guy who the U.S. is calling the recognized president. and you've got, the recognized president saying, there's no food or medicine, and you got the current
Basically,
president,
the truth.
yeah, and you got the current president saying we're all good, don't send us anything. But but under the radar though, under the radar, cryptocurrency is
Good.
is moving back and forth across the borders.
And why is that? Because it's a stateless currency. That's that's its function. Like if the entire world says it's got value, then now you can transfer that value. Be damned your whoever your current dictator or president is. You can shut down the internet to stop it. Good luck. Actually, we could do a podcast on how to transact Bitcoin without the internet, right? If you really want to dork out, we can, go into that path, right?
Yeah,
Anyway.
well, I mean, it's sad. The circumstances this has taken place is sad, of course, but like I said, this is looking at CryptoNext, which is one of the exchanges, or the biggest exchange, I guess, between that, and they saw 2.5 million in BTC to, I think this is the Colombian peso here, move in 24 hours, and then this at 5.3 million move between Venezuela and Brazilians money. And we talked earlier, or we've talked in a previous episode about Dash is KFC supporting Dash, as well as some other stories. So just another.
Wait, hold on, slow down. You said KFC?
Yeah.
Like Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah,
Okay, I just want to make sure I heard that right. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and then and whatever that I don't remember the name. Their equivalent of Walmart is accepting Dash as well down there. So there's quite a few.
Wow.
International corporations that are starting to take, a cryptocurrency for payment.
Yeah, interesting.
Right. Yeah. No, as the money goes out of there. So
There was another one too. I was just thinking about Venezuela and damn, I forgot. Yeah, sorry. There was just something else I was reading where it was it related to this, and now I forget off the top of my head.
Yeah, you're fired.
I know I'm a bad internet.
You're terrible. You're a terrible YouTuber.
Hey, check this out. I forgot.
Right.
Well, look, we can't have a good episode without me beating on Swift.
Yeah,
So,
I saw your links. I was like, really, dude? Like, here we go. All right, it's the J Hour. Let's go.
It's the Swift Show.
We see it's every week, right? Every week, these guys, have great marketing. But what I did cherry pick out of a couple of these articles is that they said it took 2 years for them to get the first 100 banks, and then a year to get the second 100 banks, and they believe in less than the next 6 months they'll get the 100. They feel like they're starting to hit a velocity and mass, and are starting to really make a push. All and it's primarily right now in the Asian and Middle East markets, but they are they feel like they're making a foothold, and they're doing it at costs that are next to nothing. What do they say here? Yeah, the biggest cost is holding local currencies and making payout possible. Banks keep a large pre-funded amount of the beneficiary currencies, which translates into a higher cost of capital and depreciation risk that increases the cost per transaction. And this is what they're eliminating in Ripple. So yeah, I'm a Ripple fanboy. I said it.
Well,
we know.
Okay, I've got a confession to make.
Oh boy.
I had to move some coins off of Hit BTC last time I ever used that exchange. But the fees to use Bitcoin, LTC, several other cryptos was like a minimum of $5 just to get your coins off. So I was like, fuck. And I checked Ripple, and it was like 0.02 cents or 0.02 Ripple. And I was like, oh. So I cashed out in Ripple, moved to Bittrex, and then moved back into Bitcoin.
Which is funny. There were I think I was reading some dialogue regarding using Ripple as the arbitrage currency because the transactions were so fast. It was like you could do all that in Ripple, from exchange to exchange, right? Because that was the only way to do it fast enough to actually make the arbitrage worthy between the two.
I guess I still don't. Oh yeah, right. So you sell, for instance, so you buy your Ripple from your Bitcoin,
Convert it and then
which
convert it on
change
either side. Yeah, right.
right, which happens very quickly
Mhm.
in the exchange itself, and
Right.
then zap it out.
You zap it out and then convert it back. Yeah, sure.
Convert back, right?
Yep. Or you play the
That's a good
arbitrage
idea,
game
actually.
where you're keeping balances on each exchange and then you're just tracking
Buy,
all of
sell,
that.
buy, sell.
Yeah, you're doing it that way. I mean, but either way, but you can't do that with Bitcoin, right? Because it's just not
Nope.
designed that way. And I'm not going to hate on it for that. That's not part of the protocol, right? It's like I can't quickly transact my gold either. That doesn't make it worth less, right? Yeah.
Well, you might have actually, honestly, maybe in the beginning, it was quicker, and now it just isn't or something.
Well, no, the transaction's always only ever confirmed every 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
It's always 10 minutes, right? But
That's-
now we have congestion that can
possible.
happen, but what are you gonna do?
yeah. That's correct.
No, look, and here this quote here is the bank dropped their fee from $20 to $2 per transaction. That was how much they dropped their fee, and
Wow.
based on what Eric's saying, it probably cost them pennies.
But again, Jay, not to rain on your parade. I
Pissing
have a hard time seeing any of the big conglomerate banks using Ripple's system rather than,
Their own.
those guys, get together and create their own.
Right.
Yeah, right. They don't want to cut
Absolutely.
anybody into.
Why?
their
Yeah.
fight.
Why would I use somebody else's coin? It's open source. I make my own. Like,
I don't disagree. I don't disagree that.
But why do they use Swift though?
But if Swift
well,
is a tool that drives the cost down and drives the speed up, then
Sure, it's valid.
thank you. Ripple. If Ripple's the truth, then thank you, Ripple, for
well,
making.
hey, it's like anything else. The dearth of options drives prices down, right? If there's only one option for something, and that one option can build
Right,
whatever they want, then you get raped, right? But if you have 15 options and they're all competing, it's basic capitalism. At that point,
Yeah.
now prices have to drop. So we're just seeing more options come into the space, which is good for you and I and everybody else. So
Yeah. No, I agree. All right, let's see what pops up here. Oh, now look, I mentioned this earlier, and all you guys are like, again.
Woo!
So, okay, really quick, I'm just gonna blast this out. So, okay, great. Funny how this stuff would just tank everything last year, and again, Venezuela's using more Bitcoin. It's like we constantly have this news of it's being adopted more, and it's like it's not enough, to bump it back up, right?
Yeah. That what? That's a great point, right? So we've got all kinds of good news coming out every day, and we
all the time now.
Yeah, you look at the market cap, and it's
Yeah, so we could probably talk, in another week or so about the that awesome video that guy did that leaked out, and then he ended up releasing it, where he's talking about his 4-year Bitcoin cycles and does all these graphs and everything. It's really good. But yeah, it's basically like, we hit that 2018 was that year 3 of the 4-year, and so what's it going to take to start pushing the price up above 4,000 or 5,000 again, to where people are going to start looking at it again, and be on that next big bull run, right? Is it really just going to be institutional, or is it going to have to be retail again, as a combination of both? Obviously nobody knows those answers, but that's kind of when I'm thinking about these things. I see this news, I'm like, well, I kind of, last year is kind of like, well, if that we've gotten enough of this stuff, if that's not going to do it,
Right.
nothing is. I don't know. So
Well,
yeah,
the thing
these
that-
ETFs are inevitable.
Well,
I don't think.
Well, okay, but when they say inevitable, yeah, okay, yes, but that's fucking vague, right? Because we're talking about
Right.
like they're And honestly, Hester Pierce made the best argument ever, because it was like, look, you're not looking at your own law, your own rules correctly. And it's like, if you're going to hold Bitcoin to this standard, you need to hold everything else to that standard as well. And they haven't. Okay. And so it's like, well, we need to make sure there's no manipulation. Well, you haven't really done that with gold and silver even, right? But eventually the ETF got approved. And so I think they're just playing cautious. The SEC's job is to protect Joe Idiot from losing all his money, okay? Whether I agree with that or not is a different story, but I get it, and I get the mandate. And their main argument is, we really look at this liquidity and we look at the BART patterns and we go, pretty sure that's being manipulated. And you know what? I can't really argue with that, dude. I can't, because when you have a low volume, low liquidity product, and people, you have whales. Yes, of course. If I was a whale, okay, I should go on record, but I'm just saying, I get it, dude. I get why it is the way it is. So until that changes, the ETF probably isn't a thing. But the reason it does matter is because the ETF turns the access to that thing into a product that fits the mold of the existing infrastructure, right? It becomes this essentially a stock that fits all the rules that a stock investment does. So then when you talk about institutional, all of those people can then buy that because it fits all the rules and the molds of the traditional trading. So it is kind of a chicken and the egg thing. For the ETF to happen, you have to have lots of liquidity and lots of markets and lots of proof that it's not easily manipulated. Well, how do you get that? Well, you need lots of institutional money. Great. So it's a cyclical thing. So now we're seeing we've come really far low. The volume is low, interest is low. Everybody's crying bottom. Where that actual bottom is, who knows? But eventually, retail people will come back in. Retail people will say, I'll test the waters a little bit. And really, it could be retail buying that then starts to send the hype train back up. Dude, and I don't care about time. I don't care whether that's tomorrow, whether that's a year from now or 5 years from now. I really don't. I think that unless the entire world decides that, let's talk about Bitcoin. Let's talk about crypto. It's just Bitcoin. Unless tomorrow the world decides that Bitcoin is worth nothing, I don't think it's worth anything. Well, that's what would it take to make this thing go to zero. Otherwise,
which is not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, right? So otherwise, what's the other scenario? Well, people start to realize that it does have characteristics that don't exist anywhere else. The double spend problem has been fixed. True digital money that's decentralized and stateless. For me, when you're talking to me, that's the biggest thing. Stateless is huge, and slowly, it may be countries like Argentina where, they have major problems and they're the ones that go, you know what, let's use this thing because this isn't tied to any dictator or any president, right? We can all agree that this has some kind of value and transact in that, and you can't stop it. And then slowly some of these more destabilized countries actually create more value for this thing. And then you got your Joe Blow, your guy who lives in Vermont. He says, "Oh man, this thing's actually still going up," and he invests in it, right? It's like, do you think there's value in a decentralized stateless currency? And if you say no, I have to ask you, why do you think that? Tell me why you think that's not worth something. And that would be a great discussion. But as of yet, nobody's really been able to give me that answer.
Well, I think people that say they wouldn't be is because of the way that they understand money now, right? A perfect example, though, of why Argentina, or not why, I suppose how, or maybe why, look at the internet, and then look when the White House joined the internet, right?
Right.
You could say a similar thing, that there is this worldwide network of value. The internet was this value. A lot of people didn't get it. They saw that you could do things on it. Whoa, yeah, what all this? The White House joins it, right? So it's like the White House didn't try to build its own network, even though it has its own, the government has its own currency, obviously, but which they're very deeply invested in, by the way. But and they're not going to go easy. I could see though that I think there's two things. One, I could see that it goes that way maybe, and they just decide, it's just cheaper to build, some state-sponsored Lightning connection networks onto the global money chain, right? There could be that, or which tends to happen a lot is
as long as the people accept it, right? I mean, you could make that viable by decree, but you still have these
trying
other.
to do with the petro sort of. I mean,
Sure.
they're not trying to touch it to Bitcoin, but it's that Iran's doing the same thing, right? They just announced too that they're making their.
But those same people still have access to a decentralized stateless currency. So you're like, hey, this is the only currency you can use in this country. Okay, but if you have a peer-to-peer system that you can't stop, then how can you enforce your newly created government fiat cryptocurrency compared to a real stateless one? Does that make sense?
So yeah, of course. And then it gets to my next part, which is like you get all your smart economists and everything. You get all of these other people connected to money around the world, World Bank and everything, and then you draw on that, right? Which seems like these countries try to do that, and they just keep getting in trouble regardless. So, yeah, maybe it's just this movement at some point that's like the web, like internet, right? It's there. A lot of people jumped on it early. Governments finally jumped on it in the ways that they did. Obama spent $2 billion trying to build a medical website thing on it and didn't work right, so it's there, and eventually people will connect to it in ways they probably can, right? And it doesn't have to necessarily. I don't feel like it has to necessarily be like a state-sponsored deep petro type of thing. Maybe it's, who knows, maybe they just build lightweight lightning networks or something onto it. I couldn't see governments obviously doing that because then they lose control. But
right, exactly. Well, that's not government. That's more bankers as opposed to government, right?
Yeah.
The government's
they're
government's borrowing money from the the banking cartel. So
yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Did we exhaust that?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's Mimblewimble. I'm ignorant on Mimblewimble. Why is that?
Sounds funny.
This was it was Lop started it, right? Or he worked on it. Eric was talking to me about it.
He's like, Eric, help me. What's Mimblewimble?
I see but is it? I mean, it must be one of many different privacy protocols that are out there then.
Yeah. I think we looked at this for our project a little while ago, and trying to figure out how people, were building their basically all their privacy pieces on the chains and stuff, right? Because the thing that we were trying to build was, we were trying to answer the question of how you can build something publicly that can be versioned, private, exist forever, all this stuff. So we kind of did a fast flyby of it, and it just always stuck to me as like, oh yeah, okay.
It's a way to do confidential transactions.
Yeah.
That's the TLDR.
Yeah, it's obviously complicated, but that's the gist of it. And you're going to start seeing a lot of these protocols coming onto the chains. Privacy is obviously important, and a lot of the chains aren't private,
No, for
so
sure.
they have to implement these additional protocols to make transactions private. Um, and so we're going to start seeing these bulletproofs, all kinds of
So
tech rolling out in the coming years.
how does Mimblewimble differ from the protocols that like Dash and Monero use?
You have to read about it.
Oh yeah. So you don't know. I'm just asking. I'm not putting it in the
I don't
spot.
know exactly how it works.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know if it's like an improvement or like is it just different? Like because we already
No, I think it was just another different implementation.
Okay, so because we know we already have like privacy coins, so I'm trying to figure out like, is this a way to then attach privacy to existing coins like Litecoin, versus building that with privacy in mind, like Dash and Monero have done?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
And
exactly
Zcash.
what
Okay.
it is.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, cool. Got it.
Moving on. That's enough about that.
Are we dorking out too much for you, dude? What's
Oh, I
like?
I
Fuck
found-
you guys, man. Like we're moving on.
Yeah. Look, this is the feel good article, right? They're throwing banks under the bus for the true money laundering. And so there was a report that was created, and this report lays out all the bad banks right there, and they talk about they're talking financial crimes up to 65 billion for Bernie Madoff, 2.5 billion from JP Morgan Chase, another 378 billion from Mexican, all laundering through banks. And then down here they talk about the pushback on Silk Road and cryptocurrency, and it's under
Listen,
$50.
that brings me to the argument where like people say, Bitcoin, it's the currency of criminals. Okay, granted, I can go pull a fucking bill out of my wallet and it probably has cocaine residue on it. Okay, so you know what I mean? Like cash does that too. And granted, the governments would love to get rid of cash too. So like these,
And they are.
right. But I mean, that's why thank God we have some alternatives, right? Because I'm sure they're salivating looking at this stuff, going, "Why didn't we think of this first?" Like
it's so the hypocrisy of it. Right? Here, the Wall Street Journal saw insight in that over 2 years there was 9 million in illegal funds laundered through Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, okay. I'll stop you though, because there's a lot more money flowing through the banks than there is through Bitcoin. So we have to do like a percentage-based thing. What percentage of Bitcoin do you think is laundering money versus what percentage of the money flowing through banks? You can't just take a nominal amount, and compare that, because that's not fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting when MDB is on there, because I'm reading a book right now that's talking about that whole thing, and it sounds pretty crazy.
What's one in MDB? What?
It's the Malaysia development scandal that happened with this kid out of Malaysia that ended up. I haven't finished the book, but it's basically laying it out. Billions. What did he do? He's funneled billions between all these connected families from Malaysia, the Middle East. It's basically the story about this kid that grows up and wants to, do something, amazing with his life. And so he ends up making the right connections to the right people around the world through his dad's wealth. And then, just keeps escalating it and gets connected in with the Malaysian government and all kinds of stuff. So,
all right, so maybe one of our future Book of the Month Club readings.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, they have them listed there for that reason. So.
All right.
Yeah, and unless you're really hardcore, sophisticated, laundering money through Bitcoin's not the best way to go, because transactions are available on the blockchain. If you didn't create your wallet, using a VPN or something, they, the FBI can come back and know, your IP address, who you are, where that money went. It's.
Yeah, and even with mixers and stuff, right? Like eventually, with enough computing power, you can still probably find where those transactions went.
I think the interesting thing though with Mixer is that I read some other book where they touched on this, and where what they suggested in the book, I forget which one, but basically, the there there's a possibility in the future that people will just avoid transacting with addresses that have touched Mixer coins.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's like another thing, right?
Dirty.
Because
It's
you
like
see it.
verified dirty money, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's
So, yeah,
crazy.
you could think about it too, right? It's
Wow.
like, if people are looking for those types of things, you happen to,
But
have.
can't you just do that in another way? If I wanted to make, God, I don't know if I want to say this online, but if I wanted to convert my money, can't I just put my money on an exchange, buy a coin, sell it back for Bitcoin, and then withdraw it back out? Like, doesn't that kind of
Wash it.
wash it a little bit?
I don't see how the exchange
Yeah.
is going to have all of your
Oh,
wallet addresses on it.
Right.
So they would flow. So it would go in. Okay, so as long as the Bitcoin wallet on the exchange doesn't stay static, then yeah, okay. So money went out, money came back in, but okay, I put a Bitcoin on an exchange. I sell that Bitcoin for Ethereum. Then I sell that Ethereum back for Bitcoin. That exchange right there doesn't
That's a
that
record.
correct? But is that Bitcoin still dirty at that point?
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You see what I mean? Like it left the chain.
You washed the dirty Bitcoin.
Right? So like at that point, now granted, there's this wallet that you could follow the flow, but like what is that still considered dirty? Because it went in a wallet address, left, came back to that wallet address, and then it has to leave that wallet address at some point and go
Well,
somewhere.
That's a good question.
so I guess so. I think there's two things with that. One, the question would be, could you say you are down the receiving line, you want to track the transactions backward,
It's on a video.
right?
Bud.
So could
Maybe
you
Oh, good night.
can you track the transactions
Hey, did you brush your teeth? Sorry.
into the exchange or what? I guess that's the thing I'm thinking. Like, I guess they have to all be public. So yeah, I don't know.
Remember a couple months ago, the U.S. government threw this out there that there were 2 Iranians that they said do
Right.
not accept, do not transact with these wallets.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, a warning shot's been fired, but
That's probably just the beginning.
Yeah, they'll look. I'm sure. Well, we talked. There's a company that the U.S. government has already hired to start figuring this stuff out, right?
Oh, there's probably many.
Oh yeah. I mean, oh
Yeah.
sure, yeah, and it shouldn't be hard. Again, we talk about we understand the technology. We understand you can absolutely track all the transactions. But I guess what I'm saying is,
except Monero.
well, yeah, I'm talking about Bitcoin, right? So like,
Yeah,
Bitcoin,
right.
yeah. So it wasn't ever designed with privacy in place. But you got your Zcash, your Dash, your Moneros, right? And now we got Mimblewimble that can be attached to other coins. So, like, there's definitely ways to keep yourself private should you want to. But this assertion that Bitcoin is used by terrorists and drug dealers and pedophiles and everything
No,
because
it's
it's
just-
anonymous. It's like, dude, is this still being written? Like it kind of drives me nuts. Like
Yeah, and they've been saying that for how long?
forever, dude.
Right.
Like, come on.
It's just rhetoric that makes for easy, press.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, behind the scenes, JP Morgan and all the other banks are buying. They're starting to stockpile
Exactly.
Bitcoin. So
They got the media saying, "Hey, this is for
Right.
crime."
Yeah, that's one thing I've been seeing again more posts is that there's some of these sites tracking wallets and the accumulation phase they said has already begun, and they're just watching Bitcoin going into wallets and not leaving the UTXOs, right?
Mhm.
Basically, so
yeah, I started a spreadsheet back in December to kind of track that movement and was labeling the wallets, for what information I could find, the exchanges, and there were some really interesting data on some of those wallets. Like I think it was the top 120. There were like I forgot if it was 8,000 Bitcoins, like going into each one of
I
the
remember that.
wallets.
Yeah, I remember that when you posted that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really, I mean, so yeah, something's going on behind the scenes. And I was wondering, I was trying to find
Right.
some of the backed wallets, because if they're up doing custodial,
Yeah,
you should be able to,
they need a bankroll, right? They gotta be able to,
right.
yeah, they gotta be able to start.
So, but somebody has to write a script to update all that information. I can't do that. So,
Well, we're talking, if you really want to do it right, you're talking not just a script. You're talking about some pretty intense software to sit there and spider through all the transactions and find out what the hell's going on. Or you could probably pick one wallet. You could probably script it with like one wallet and follow all the stuff going on with one, right? But
yeah, because once you have, like some of the exchange wallets, those are obviously the biggest ones.
right.
And then you can start going through some wallets that you think might be, good to follow. Then you can,
Wallets of interest.
yeah, narrow it down.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you just think about that for a second, though, exchange wallets are some of the biggest out there, and exchanges themselves and everything, and how some of these exchanges didn't even exist like 2 years ago. It still blows my mind that, that is possible, and that's not only possible, that it's happening, and it's just picking up steam. Again, I keep coming back, just thinking about Binance and just what a juggernaut, they are in this space, and it's just like, man, just kind of step back and just think like, wow, that's pretty mind blowing.
You've never seen my wallet, Jason. It's enormous. Screw those exchanges.
Yeah, I would.
Like
Come on, man, you're trying to cheapen my mind blowing
Jay's
experience.
speechless.
Yeah, I don't know where to go with that one. I'm just like, I thought this was a different type of show.
The
But
bar,
whenever Jared gets a hold of
listen,
it, what
the
to
bar,
expect.
the bar has been lowered. It's like the limbo, dude. We just keep going lower and lower and lower. All right. Anyway, what else we got, Jay? Is that it? Was that the last one?
Well, I think this is probably a good one to top, end on. I had the last one was the one on SBI, the financial, giant in Japan, who is going to open up cryptocurrency to their 23 million clients. I don't know that means that there's 23 million clients going to, jump on. Probably not. I don't know if that means, their existing base is, the clients is already on some other Asian exchange and they're just trying to pull them over. But I think it's another example of, this is a mainstream corporation in Japan, opening up the door to, for their finance customers to crypto. I don't know if you know anything about this company, Eric, that you want to comment on.
Yeah, SBI's been working behind the scenes for quite a few years with crypto, and for a while, Roger Ver was pumping Bcash to them, and then the XRP guys were. But actually, I'm happy to hear this, that they're offering um, the standard basket, which those are pretty much the common coins that all the Japanese exchanges trade with. So most of the Japanese public knows, those there's about 7 coins. So I'm happy to hear that Bitcoin and Ethereum are part of this offering, along with Bitcoin Cash and XRP.
I guess, well, yeah, I guess seeing that initially it's Bcash, I mean, man, it just seems like,
Don't call it
why?
Bcash. Don't call it
Yeah,
Bcash.
I know, whatever.
And I think one of the interesting pull out of that is right here, where they talk about they're initially setting up, to do crypto trading back in July, right? July 2018. And they delayed the launch because they were getting crushed by demand for pre-registration. So look, we were in, we're in a bear market, and they've got people, knocking on the door.
And now everybody's like, we don't even care about it anymore. It's lost half the value from when we wanted to sign up.
Yeah, remember a massive amount of all the Bitcoin volume comes out of Japan.
Yeah.
It used to be over half. I don't know if it's still there, but worldwide trading volume, 50% of Bitcoin. That's a big volume.
What's you?
So
But so again, I'm gonna get back to Bcash for a sec. I mean, I guess because it's a product, they figure people will buy it if they offer it, but it just seems like hasn't that like coin just been demolished by the shit that it went through in the last year? I mean, who is still using it? I do see like, popping up on the news like, somebody accepts Bcash now or something, but it's just kind of like, why?
bag holders.
Just people that want to get rid of, their
Yeah.
investment in it, or I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess it's rhetorical, but who knows?
Rogers, he was a powerful guy in the space, and he's
Hey.
probably a billionaire at the peak.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you know who we're talking about, but we had a guy we knew that was fully entrenched in the idea that the miners were going to only accept or who was it? Who was it was building the ASIC miners that was only accept BCA? Yeah, Jian Wu, right? And they're gonna corner the market.
Collapse.
And that didn't work. Didn't happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Like it's. But then again, hey, and to be fair, I still thought Ethereum Classic would win out over Ethereum. Like I thought that the original chain would be, and that was completely wrong, right? People accepted the fact that Ethereum was the correct chain, and Etsy still gets traded, but I don't know if anybody's developing on it or using it or doing anything other than trading it, So it's a crapshoot, dude, I guess.
But yeah, speaking of that, it's like, look at Jihan and them. They had an IPO, they had all this stuff. Everything got demolished at the end of last year. Literally everything.
Right.
It's like, what are you going to do with all that stuff now? I'm not just talking about, I'm not just talking about the miners. I'm talking about the entire Bcash community, right? Obviously SV and
you mean Bitcoin, right?
No.
No, I'm just that's
I get that. Right,
Anyway.
yeah. No, but you know what I mean? It's just like those guys just ruin themselves. I guess Calvin, what's his name, doesn't care, but
Right.
or what's the other guy, Craig Wright,
Oh,
like
yeah, Satoshi.
they want to tear that whole thing down, but Jesus, dude, it's like you guys deserve it, man. You just got pummeled.
Hey, it was a gamble. They tried, they lost, whatever.
Yeah. So why is even, who is using Bitcoin Cash now? I don't even know if you can use it anymore. You have to use like the fork, one of the forks, SV. It's like, now we accept BCH,
right.
SV.
It forks
People are like, what the hell is that?
Right. I need some BCH, ABC, XYZ.
Yeah, right.
And then I can transact with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, and there's some other posts too. I know we're wrapping up, but really quick, there's some other posts that I keep seeing where somebody was trumpeting that 95% of all of the coins in the next year are going to be dead, blah blah blah. Which obviously, who knows? Probably a big percentage, of course, but I just don't see like who's going to use Bitcoin Cash for anything.
Well,
you can't even call it.
And that's a good that's a good argument, because how many money coins do we need, right?
Right.
Like we don't.
Yeah.
Like we don't need a ton of money coins, right? There's going to be a few, but there should be alternatives. But do I need 100 or do I need 5? I don't know. I mean, the market will probably decide that. But same with app coins, right? Same with development platforms. How many development platforms do we need? Well, as many as the market demands. Eventually, there's a dilution that happens, and you're going to have to filter out the wheat from the chaff, right? So. That's the
consolidation.
Beauty of, right. But that's the beauty of this, right? We're discovering all of this. This is all happening in real time, globally, which is pretty amazing.
And in the end, Binance will be the winner.
Jeez, they already are.
all hail CZ, right?
Binance and lawyers always win.
What's that?
Binance and the lawyers always win.
Yeah.
Is CZ a lawyer?
No, dude, he would be double winning then. Yeah, I don't think so.
That's what, when you said Binance is going to be the winner, it just kind of I'm like, yeah, it's like being an attorney.
Something tells me though, like, remember, we've seen these cycles before. Like Jason alluded to earlier, Poloniex used to be it. Poloniex was the shit. We were all on it. We were trading on it. That was the only one that was legitimate. And then, look, I made shirts. I made logos that were making fun of the fact that you couldn't get into every time the volume would pick up, the website would crash, and the only thing you could do was API connections, and even those would eventually crash, right? So Poloniex just was consistently overloaded to the point where people were so pissed off that by the time things would kind of coalesce and come back, there was major movements, right? So what was next? Bittrex, right? So we went from Poloniex, all the way went to Bittrex, right? And then Bittrex got overloaded because it was two guys in their garage trying to run this thing. And they're like, oh my God, what's going on? We weren't ready for this, right?
Well, not only that, they froze everybody's accounts too, and they wouldn't say why. Remember they had the big freeze at the, September of last year.
But that was after. That was later, though. I'm saying the move from Poloniex was when? What do you think? I mean, that was probably
July.
That was
July.
June, July.
Yeah.
June, July, and then by September they were like, "Oh my God, we can't handle this volume," right?
Yeah, they had.
I didn't think Bittrex ever had much of a problem really handling the volume, did they?
Yeah, I think they did because unless they killed it themselves,
Well,
maybe.
Bittrex, they changed their UI. Remember,
They did do that.
Like,
they did do
and
that.
they had a lot of problems.
And I think they might have gotten emails from people up on high too, and they started going, "Well, we're gonna have to start doing some KYC and
all the KYC stuff."
And then here's this new exchange as well. We don't do that. We let you open an anonymous account, 2 Bitcoin, come on over. And everybody said, "Sweet, we're out." And so
for those people that could get their money out.
But I guess my point is, eventually though, unless Binance can somehow maintain that, these cycles keep happening. So maybe the next thing, maybe their DEX takes off. Maybe somebody else opens up. We have Kraken doing their futures exchange is fully regulated. Maybe one of these fully regulated ones actually pulls all the institutional volume, which then pulls everybody else back to that one, because where do you want to trade on? You want to trade on the one with the most volume, the liquidity. Liquidity is king when you're doing trading. So, these things all come and go. God bless him. He's got a great platform, but, don't count your chickens, dude. You're probably not the king of the world forever, But anyway, that's all I have, dude. I think we went through all our topics. I think it was a pretty good one. We ran, 95 hours, which is pretty good.
Except for last week's.
Huh? Yeah, we put 2 weeks in one. That's what we did. We're good. So, all right. Well, I think that's all I have. If you guys don't have anything else, I think we'll go ahead and cut the stream, and we'll see you guys next week. All right.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
See you.